Get some!
Ice cream.
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a monster show ahead for you guys. I gotta be honest, we woke up this morning, looked at the news cycle. I was a little upset at the lack of news stories that were inspiring enough to put in the rundown. But as the day progressed, a lot more news broke. So we've got a lot of great stories to get to. We will be doing some updates on the train derailment in East Palestine. I think it's important to stay on that story. I'm already seeing some headlines dismissing Donald Trump's visit to East Palestine. And I think dismissing it would be a major mistake. And I'll tell you why. That'll be later on in this segment of the show. In the second hour, John Iadarola will be joining me to talk about a whole host of issues, including one of the largest studies into the so-called 4-day work week in the UK. Apparently it was so successful that employers want to stick to it. So I want to talk about the results and the possibility of implementing those types of labor policies here in the United States. But as always, please like and share the stream if you're watching us online, if you're watching us on YouTube. And you can also support us by becoming a member by going to tyt.com/join. With that said, let's give you this update.
Question about rail safety, because in November and December, Norfolk Southern met with federal regulators and pushed back against this proposed rule that would have, in most cases, mandated at least 2 crew members on trains. Why did Norfolk Southern spend so much money, millions upon millions of dollars, lobbying against it?
That really should be the top question reporters ask over and over again of Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw, who on one hand loves to pretend he's in favor of safety regulations, but talk is cheap when you look at the actions of major rail companies, including Norfolk Southern. You'll notice that they've spent, just in the last election cycle, $1.8 million on lobbying. And of course, that lobbying is meant to prevent any regulation that could eat away at their profits. Now, why don't we hear what Alan Shaw had to say in response to that very good question?
What we're really interested in is solution-based safety rules. And we're very focused on following the science. And with respect to this accident, the National Transportation Safety Board, as you know, they're in charge of this investigation, and I'm very much looking forward to their results of their investigation. Once we have that, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna figure out what we could have done better. As you can imagine, every day since this occurred, I've been asking myself, what could we have done better? What could we have done to prevent this?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Alan, because the fact of the matter is there was a lot that Norfolk Southern could have done to, in the very least, mitigate the disaster that occurred in East Palestine, Ohio. But before I get to all those details, I just want to address what he said in the very beginning of that video. He says that the company is very much in favor of solution-based safety rules. Fascinating. Because I recall the incredible reporting by The Lever, which showed that Norfolk Southern would brag to their shareholders about updating their braking system from the old Civil War era technology to the better electric braking system, which would help the trains brake or stop faster than the old model. Now, once there was talk of the government mandating that all trains use the new braking systems, Norfolk Southern, which bragged about the efficacy of the new brakes, lobbied pretty hard to prevent any government mandate or any government regulation that would force them to implement or install the new braking systems on their trains. So that's one thing that, makes it abundantly clear to me that the executives over at this rail company really aren't interested in the so-called solution-based safety rules, because once they know what the solution-based safety rules could be, they lobby hard against them. Other things that I wanted to just quickly mention is, for starters, when rail workers raised concerns over the size of the train that ended up derailing in East Palestine, executives over at Norfolk Southern ignored them. I mean, I'm old enough to remember that because it happened not too long ago. Let's watch.
Employees working on the train were concerned about what they say was excessive weight and length in the days before it derailed and burst into flames.
Fire department reports to the station for a mutual aid fire with East Palestine.
According to employees familiar with the matter, the train broke down at least once before derailing on February 3rd. In a statement, Norfolk Southern said the weight was uniform throughout, with features to help reduce mechanical issues, and that a longer and heavier train used to run the route.
Right. Except I wouldn't take anything the executives at the company have to say at face value at all. I would much rather listen to what the rank and file workers have noticed with the company and its incredibly unsafe, cost-cutting strategies. So for instance, in regard to the size of the trains and the number of workers on said trains, the employees have a lot to reveal to us. The employees say there were concerns among those working on the train over what they believed was the train's excessive length and weight. 151 cars, 9,300 feet long, 18,000 tons before it reached East Palestine, which contributed to both the initial breakdown and the derailment. And the initial breakdown, by the way, happened a few days prior to the train derailing. So the train broke down, the workers reach out to their higher ups to let them know, listen, we think the train broke down specifically because it's too big, and the executives ignored them. Let me give you more. We shouldn't be running trains that are 150 car lengths long, one of the employees said. There should be some limitations to the weight and the length of the trains. In this case, had the train not been 18,000 tons, it's very likely the effects of the derailment would have been mitigated. Now, the train that derailed is considered to be very long, according to Sarah Feinberg, who happened to serve as an administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration from 2015 to 2017. We had shared her quote with you earlier this week, but I just want to remind you of what she had to say. When I was FRA administrator, I was not happy with the lengths of the trains, and they were 80 or 90 cars long. This train, meaning the one that just derailed in East Palestine, was 50% longer. So does Alan Shaw need any other advice? Because I would venture to say that he knows all this. It's just that following certain safety guidelines would mean spending some of the money that they would much rather transfer over to their shareholders. In fact, another reminder, here's a fun headline from More Perfect Union. Norfolk Southern boosted shareholder payouts 4,500% and slashed workforce 33% prior to Ohio disaster. And that had a huge impact on their operations. As More Perfect Union reports, as a result of Norfolk Southern's precision scheduled railroading, trains went from 80 to 90 rail cars supported by 5 workers to 2 workers overseeing 150 rail cars or more. This enabled management to effectively invert how much companies spent on workers and how much profit they generated for shareholders. Let's take a look at that inversion, because this graph will show you as they cut costs associated with labor, their operating profit margin went up considerably. So this was all by design. Alan Shaw, the CEO of the company, knows that this is by design. Higher returns for shareholders, higher profits, that is what the priority is. And what was hilarious, and I'm being sarcastic when I say hilarious, let me be clear about that. After the derailment happened, it took how many weeks for the EPA to announce that Norfolk Southern would be responsible for the cleanup? Why would that even be a question? So it's another case of privatizing gains, socializing losses, right? If the press wasn't focused on this story at all, if there wasn't a tremendous amount of pressure on government officials to do something about this, fact of the matter is, I would venture to say that the EPA wouldn't even have Norfolk Southern pay for the costs associated with the cleanup. Likely the local community would have to deal with it, maybe FEMA. And this kind of stuff happens over and over and over again. And by the way, we're all supposed to sit here and pretend as though the only problem with corporations in this country is that they're too woke, according to Republicans. No, the problem is they control our Congress, they legally bribe our lawmakers, and our lawmakers go along with the deregulation that the rail companies desperately want in order to increase their profits. That's what the reality is. That is the problem with these corporations. They can cry about Lego being too woke. They can cry about the green M&M not being sexy enough after its rebranding. But those are not the issues with corporations. Those are not the issues that have an impact on our lives every single day. The issues that have an impact on our lives every single day usually have to do with the deregulation that, again, maximizes profits for the companies while socializing losses. We pay for the losses over and over and over again, whether it be through financial means or through our health because of the pollution that we have to inhale, the dirty water we have to consume. That is the reality of the situation. Finally, I want to go to one specific Republican here. Because Senator John Thune, a Republican, he loves that rail money, just loves it, just flows into his pockets. He's one of the top recipients of the bribe money doled out by the rail industry. And it turns out that Senator John Thune proposed a bill designed to push back the deadline for the implementation of electronically controlled pneumatic or ECP brakes on rail cars carrying oil or other hazardous liquids. The legislation required years of study and new rulemaking. So we had been covering how Congress stepped in after the Obama administration wanted to implement the new braking system and essentially passed legislation that would make it far more difficult to have that come to fruition, okay? So one of the things that John Thune initially did is he pushed for and succeeded in passing a bill that kind of kicked the can down the road when it came to the implementation of the new braking system. He argued that the technology was untested and that he simply wanted more data before moving ahead with the mandate for electronically controlled brakes, which by the way had been issued earlier in 2015 under the Obama administration. But Thune's goal wasn't even to just delay the safety rules, he wanted to go further. Thune's legislation was part of an industry push to kill the ECP mandate. Review of lobbying, congressional and court records show, around the same time as he advanced delaying provisions in omnibus transportation legislation, Thune also introduced another bill to entirely eliminate the mandate for implementation of ECP. Following the election of President Donald Trump and with Republican majorities in the House and Senate, the rule was indeed scuttled in 2018. So please spare me the faux concern from the right wing in regard to corporations in America. Because when it comes to their worst behavior that has the biggest impact on our lives, Republicans aid and abet. They love the deregulation. They can't get enough of it. Of course, they will exploit the tragedy that occurred in East Palestine to posture as individuals who really want to hold corporations accountable. But behind the scenes, they're taking the bribe money, they're doing the deregulation, and really you have this incredibly weak Democratic Party that is incredibly ineffective in fighting back against that narrative. Because fact of the matter is, there's a lot of regulation that Pete Buttigieg could have done as transportation secretary. We've been talking about that in great detail. And he has failed to do just that. So Democrats don't have much of a leg to stand on, and they're not good at messaging. And at the same time, Republicans posture as these warriors who go against the corporate greed, when in reality they don't, they aid and abet it. And they make it appear as though they're looking out for the American people. Optics in politics is just as important as fighting for certain policies. Because if Republicans can successfully present themselves as those who are looking out for local communities, the working class, even if they're lying about it, the optics is all they need. I mean, we saw that with Trump in 2016 when he paid lip service to the economic anxieties that Americans in the middle of the country were dealing with. Obviously, he didn't do anything to alleviate those economic anxieties. In fact, he added to them, but it didn't matter. Just paying lip service was enough. Anyway, let's move on. There's a lot of other news to talk about, including Donald Trump himself and how he is using this tragedy to his political advantage.
We will be back. The Biden administration should ensure that every family has the option of moving and homes and everything else until this thing is straightened out. I do want to especially thank some of the incredible people that helped us, because we're bringing thousands of bottles of water, Trump water, actually, most of it. Some of it we had to go to a much lesser quality water. You want to get those Trump bottles, I think, more than anybody else. But we're bringing a lot of water, thousands of bottles, and we have it in trucks, and we brought some on my plane today. But to that end, I'm pleased to announce that we've helped coordinate the delivery of the water and bottled water, as well as the tractor trailers full of it. We have big tractor trailers full of water. I think you're going to have plenty of water for a long time, maybe.
Former President Donald Trump visited East Palestine, Ohio, and as goofy as it might sound to hear him brag about the Trump water bottles that he's providing to the local community, I think it would be a mistake to underestimate the impact that this can have. And to be absolutely clear, homeboy Trump is campaigning right now. That is what he's doing. He saw an opportunity to exploit a tragedy for his political advantage. And regardless of how you might feel about him as a politician, as a person, and as many of you know, I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, what he's doing is actually politically smart. Showing up, providing something of material to the local community there, a local community that is terrified to bathe in that water, to consume that water, because of the fact that they're experiencing headaches, rashes, while the local officials are telling them the water is safe. Trump comes in and says, don't worry, I got water bottles for you, Trump water, Trump water. Now, there's something else that he did. It was a lie, but he mentioned the inaction by FEMA and how he did something to change it. Let's watch that.
Biden and FEMA said they would not send federal aid to East Palestine under any circumstance. They're not going to send aid. I thought that was a strange statement, because I've been working with FEMA for a long time, 4 years, and they were great with us with the tornadoes, the hurricanes, and things like this. And it was a strange statement to come out, and they were doing nothing for you. They were intending to do absolutely nothing for you. JD and I spoke, and they said they're not coming. They're not going to come. And I said, that's very strange. FEMA said specifically, this doesn't meet the criteria, and that's horrible, and somebody has to do something for those people. I said back, when I announced that I was coming, they changed their tune. It was an amazing phenomena.
Come on, guys, come on. Okay, none of that is true. Like 0% of that is true, okay? FEMA didn't say, no, nah, we're not gonna help under any circumstance. Sorry, that didn't happen. And also the idea that FEMA was kind of just sitting around, didn't want to do anything until Trump, who is not an elected lawmaker, he's not president anymore. Like the idea that FEMA took marching orders from Trump is also hilarious. It's not true. But again, there's a difference here. And it's important for you guys to draw that distinction, okay? There's the real world, what the facts are. And obviously I'm giving you the facts. What he's saying there is a lie. But then there's optics and politics. And when it comes to optics and politics, what he's doing, unfortunately, is pretty genius. Because he's showing up, he's like, I got water bottles for you guys, I'm really looking out for you. Of course, he's lying about the whole FEMA thing, but he's providing this illusion of leadership, this illusion that he is so concerned about the people of East Palestine, and if it were not for him, if it weren't for him, if he didn't show up, oh, the Biden administration. What has the Biden administration done for you? And you also have to think of this in the context of how the local community is currently feeling about the Biden administration. Because local officials and conservatives have in fact criticized Biden for failing to visit the area. And Donald Trump took advantage of that concern by those local residents. So how did he do that? Take a listen.
I sincerely hope that when your representatives and all of the politicians get here, including Biden, they get back from touring Ukraine, that he's got some money left over, because we're now at $117 billion, and as you probably know.
So there he is referencing Biden's visit to Ukraine while also mentioning the over $100 billion that has already been allocated in the form of military aid to Ukraine, which an increasing number of Americans, I think understandably, are starting to get frustrated about. Not necessarily because they don't see the need to assist Ukraine in defending itself against Russia, but more importantly, when it comes to any type of social spending that helps ordinary Americans, we get nickeled and dimed like crazy by Congress. But there's no debate when it comes to military funding, defense spending, and foreign aid. In this case, when it comes to Ukraine, right? And so when people see that, and then they also think about the context they're living in, where they feel like they're struggling and there's no assistance from the government, no social spending to make their lives materially better, they get frustrated, they get angry. And while Trump might be a buffoon in some ways, he's smart enough to recognize this and exploit it for his own political means. And just real quick, going back to the FEMA argument that he made, the FEMA lie that he told during the speech, he also said, quote, "We opened up the dam and got them to move." So he's showing up and taking ownership of something he didn't do. And are the people of East Palestine or the people of Ohio gonna know that? Well, it depends on where they get their news. It depends on where they get their media. If they're stuck in a conservative news bubble, what Trump said might never be debunked for them. And Trump knows that. One final video I want to go to, I think, is another example of how Trump is using this effectively for his own political gain. Let's watch.
What's your specialty today?
How are you today? Nice to meet you.
Hello, everybody. That's a nice, beautiful looking group of people. So I know this menu better than you do, okay? I probably know it better than anybody in here. We're gonna take care of the fire department.
Okay.
We're gonna take care of the police department.
That was Donald Trump at a McDonald's in the East Palestine, Ohio area, being self-deprecating, making a point about how he knows the McDonald's menu better than the workers do, which is pretty hilarious. It's well known that he loves McDonald's. But more importantly, he also said, we're buying meals for the firefighters and the police. It would be stupid, in my opinion, to discount or brush off what Trump did in East Palestine, Ohio. What he did politically was incredibly smart. Was it deceptive? Absolutely. Was it selfish and really just about self-interest? Absolutely. But will the people of East Palestine know that? Do the people of East Palestine think that? And will the media effectively debunk the lies that Trump told during that speech? I don't think they will. So for the Democratic Party, I would take note, because it's not just about the theater that Trump is engaging in here. It goes beyond that. Trump engages in theater that makes it appear as though he is very concerned about the material conditions of Americans in the country. And in this case, particularly in East Palestine. And that is what Americans want in leadership. And they're not really getting it from Democrats. So again, if they want to just brush him off as if he's got no shot in 2024, if they want to brush him off as if he's some idiot who doesn't know what he's doing and there's no way he's gonna win, I think they're making a mistake. I really do. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you guys, including pretty devastating new report about the food we eat and how the FDA is failing to properly regulate it. We've got that and more coming right up.
They changed their tune.
Ice cream.
They changed their tune.
They changed their tune. Like what? I don't know if he really talks like that or if he plays it up during his speeches, but it's just amazing. Anyway,
They changed their tune.
they changed their tune. All right, we got lots of comments. Let's start with our members over at tyt.com. Eclectic Miscellanea says, happy Casparola Day, my favorite day of the week, but don't tell Cenk. Don't worry, I won't. Louis Cypher says, Bart got a strong ear. The Veritas video is totally controversy. Even the lyrics are similar to the Prince song that we were talking about yesterday. O'Keefe is kind of smart to know the Prince estate is in turmoil. Someone would notify them. Is it bad that I do like the song? I do.
It's good to like the song from Prince, which kind of validates why he's a genius, and it kind of validates why O'Keefe is not a genius. He has to go after somebody else's greatness.
But oligarchy. Okay, anyway. Biden flavored corn pop says, is it big water? Oh God. By the way, like I'm curious if those water bottles were like what were the water bottles? I'd like to see them. Like were they labeled Trump water? Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon says, must have taken a long time to fill those bottles of water from the taps at Mar-a-Lago or Mar-a-Loco. I like what you did there. Clifton Lewis says the Trump water has a yellow tinge to it. Could be champagne. No? What else could it be? It smells funny too. Eclectic writes in again and says, I'm surprised that Trump isn't a Burger King fan. After all, given how much he lies, we know he sure loves a good Whopper. Hashtag dad joke. That was good, that was good. Cray Souffle says, expect Ohio Democratic Senator Nina Turner, who, expect or accept, you mean. So Nina Turner did go to East Palestine, Ohio yesterday. So I love that she did that. She'd be a real leader. You know, there's a difference between the theater that Trump engages in, the fact that he exploits it to provide like this, just the faux concern he has. Like you could tell, homeboy like totally deregulated the rail industry during his tenure. I should have probably gotten into that. I just ran out of time. But yeah, he deregulated it. So when it comes to actual like policy that would improve people's lives by mitigating or preventing these derailings, I mean, he didn't do that. He deregulated and made the problem a lot worse. Anyway, I'm having difficulty talking today apparently. Let's go to our Twitch subs where Peachy Shari says, yay 22 months, get some. Haiku Dragon says, so the railroad employees can't strike because it would crash the US economy overnight, but they can't afford to lose all these derailed trains, lost time, environmental damage, just for the sake of some stock dividends. Yeah, and corporate stock buybacks, just returns for shareholders. I mean, that's the top concern for them. That's their responsibility. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
They changed their tune.
Ice cream.
Welcome back to TYT. We've got a lot more news to get to, so why don't we start with this?
Potassium bromate is a suspected carcinogen that's banned for human consumption in Europe as well as China and India, but legal in the US, where it's used by some food makers to strengthen dough and estimated to be present in over 100 products.
There is evidence that it may be toxic to human consumers, that it may even either initiate or promote the development of tumors.
Europe has banned all sorts of ingredients in their food that we consume on a regular basis, which is pretty disastrous when you consider what the health ramifications could be and very likely are as we eat all these chemicals that make their way in various products that we consume. Now, how much of a difference do the lack of food regulations in the United States make? Well, CBS looked into that. Let's watch.
Can we say for sure that these differences in regulations mean that people in the US have developed cancers that they would not have developed if they'd been eating only in Europe?
I think that is almost certainly the conclusion that we could reach.
It's not just potassium bromate, but many other chemicals and substances that are banned here in Europe over health concerns, but considered safe by the FDA.
Do you think most Americans are aware that they're being exposed to substances that are viewed as dangerous over here?
They probably just think, well, if it's available and it's in the store, then it's probably fine.
The woman you just heard from used to live in the United States. She decided to move to London and has been living in London for the past decade because she doesn't want her children eating the dangerous chemicals we consume on a regular basis because our FDA is terrible at regulating the food industry. Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why the FDA is terrible at doing the regulations that we need in order to ensure that what we're consuming doesn't make us sick. But before I get to all of those details, I just wanna mention something that I think is important to keep in mind as the debate about obesity rages on in this country. When we hear from conservatives who think that the real solution to our astronomical healthcare costs is Americans need to stop eating, they're too fat, they don't ever really take into account that we eat all sorts of things that have an impact on our bodies that we shouldn't be consuming. What kind of impact do these chemicals have in terms of our metabolism, our ability to digest these foods? I mean, it's just, we have no one looking out for us in the federal government, and in a lot of cases in state and local government either. And when it comes to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, seems like they're really set up for failure. And most of their emphasis, most of their funding, most of their budget goes toward pharmaceutical drug-related issues. Very little emphasis on food regulation. So let's give you the details on that. So the Federal Drug Administration, the Food and Drug Administration, it's funny because sometimes the officials who work within the agency call it the Federal Drug Administration because they forget that they're supposed to be regulating food as well. But anyway, the Food and Drug Administration was contacted for comment on this issue, and get a load of this. The FDA said that when used properly, potassium bromate converts into a harmless substance during food production. The agency acknowledged, however, that not all of the compound used in any given recipe may convert during the production process, but the control measures were utilized to minimize the amount in final products. Were they? Were they? I mean, honestly, that statement from the FDA doesn't really help me sleep at night. FDA regulators the FDA regulates 78% of the US food supply. Okay, so keep that percentage in mind because it's a big one. They regulate everything except for meat, poultry, and some egg products. Now, it's been more than 11 years since Congress passed a sweeping food safety law designed to prevent this type of health risk. In that time, FDA has failed to put in place safety standards for the water used to grow fresh produce, as mandated by that law, by the way, despite knowing that water is one of the main ways fresh fruits and vegetables become contaminated with deadly pathogens. Now, Congress has also ramped up funding for the FDA over the past decade. But weird, these deadly outbreaks of food contamination continue to happen, right? You hear about listeria outbreaks, you might get contacted, you might get an email, you might see a news report indicating that there's a major food recall. Don't eat the peanut butter, don't eat the lettuce, you're gonna get sick. There's E. coli, there's listeria, all sorts of reports. We see them all the time. Well, the CDC estimates that there are more than 128,000 people are hospitalized and 3,000 people die from foodborne illnesses each year, a toll that has not lessened after the sweeping update to food safety a decade ago. Also, a recent outbreak tied to contaminated infant formula, in which at least 4 babies were hospitalized and 2 died, is a stark reminder of what's at stake when the food safety system fails. Now, last year, Politico did a fantastic investigative report on what's going on at the FDA and why the agency does such a terrible job in regulating the food that we eat. I would have liked to see a little more in regard to the corruption that plays a role in some of the decision making over at the FDA, but don't worry, I've got those details for you. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now, after this months-long Politico investigation, they found that regulating food is simply not a high priority at the agency, where drugs and other medical products dominate, both in budget and in bandwidth. And the dynamic has only been exacerbated during the pandemic. So they write that the food program is on the back burner. To me, that's the #1 problem, said Stephen Ostroff, who twice served as acting commissioner of FDA and held several other senior roles at the agency, most recently as top food official. He also says there's nobody really pushing very hard to get them done in the same way that you're pushing very hard to get the COVID vaccines out there and authorized. Obviously, this report was published prior to the vaccines being authorized. We don't have that imperative and that pressure to actually make things happen on the food side of the Food and Drug Administration. That is pretty damn devastating. And what's also incredibly devastating is that the agency has been slow to acknowledge numerous other chemicals of concern, including PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, which can be found in the food supply and are used in food packaging. The FDA has also dragged its feet on major nutrition issues, even as diet-related disease rates in the United States have continued to worsen. For example, the FDA has spent the better part of a decade working on voluntary sodium reduction goals for food companies, while many other countries moved ahead with their own years ago. Why are we telling corporations that have a profit motive that we have not mandatory regulations, but voluntary regulations? Voluntary, right? We would like you to volunteer to spend more money on better ingredients for your food, quality ingredients. It's gonna cost you more. We'd like you to avoid using these harmful chemicals in the food. It's gonna cost you more. But we're not gonna mandate it. We're just gonna ask you to do it. Can you please do it? No, the FDA is supposed to regulate the food industry along with the drug industry. So why are they pretending like they don't have that power? They do have that power. They know they have that power. So let's talk a little bit about the corruption angle here, because turns out that big industry actually does lobby to the Food and Drug Administration. So in 2022 alone, I looked into which companies or which lobbying groups related to the food industry had meetings with the FDA. And here's what I found. The list includes the American Peanut Shellers Association, California Dairies Inc., the Cigar Association of America, also the Premium Cigar Association, International Bottled Water Association, Land O'Lakes, USA Rice Federation, American Bakers Association, American Farm Bureau, American Frozen Food Institute, American Honey Producers Association, American Seed Trade Association, American Soybean Association. I mean, the list goes on. And this is just last year alone. All these private interests getting together, lobbying the FDA for what? What do you think they're lobbying for? You think they're lobbying for better regulations? Of course not. They're lobbying to prevent regulations. Now, after Obama signed the Food Safety Modernization Act into law back in January of 2011, food industry lobbyists went to work right away. They didn't waste any time. And here's the result. This is a report from 2013. Winning the prize for the most frequent visitor to the FDA over the 2-year period was Miriam Guggenheim of the law firm Covington and Burling. Thanks to her efforts, members of the American Bakers Association will likely be exempt from the legislation's proposed regulations regarding warehouse temperatures measures, FDA says, prevent problems that can cause foodborne illnesses. So they pass regulation, right? Congress passes a regulation that it would be great. Obama signs it into law, and immediately after that, you have the American Bakers Association hitting up the FDA to make sure that they can be exempt from the regulations that had just been passed. Guggenheim also accompanied representatives from Mars Candy when the company wanted faster approval processes for food additives and held telephone calls with the FDA about bottled water labeling, among other client needs. It also doesn't help that nearly half of the FDA's funding comes from the industry that it is tasked with regulating. So why don't we look at the numbers from fiscal year 2021? I grabbed this, it's a screenshot from the FDA's website. So in 2021, they had an operating budget of $6.1 billion. Now keep in mind the $6.1 billion is supposed to be used to regulate pharmaceutical drugs and the food industry. About half of that, 54% of that budget, $3.3 billion of that $6.1 billion came from the federal government. But the rest of it, 46% or $2.8 billion, came from so-called user industry fees from pharmaceutical companies and food companies. So if a lot of your funding, a huge portion, nearly half of your funding is reliant on user fees coming from the very industry that you're tasked with regulating, you might have a little more of an interest in speeding up the authorization for what these companies want to carry out, okay? Or the approval process for what these companies want to carry out. Now, in response to the lack of regulation by the FDA, California lawmakers have in fact proposed taking matters into their own hands. They want to ban certain ingredients and chemicals from making their way into our food. Why don't we take a look at the next video for more information on that?
CBS News has obtained a copy of proposed legislation in California that would make it the first U.S. state to ban 5 common chemicals, including potassium bromate, from all foods sold, distributed, or made there.
They're going to have to change their recipes, get rid of these chemicals, and hopefully that's something that's going to have impacts far beyond our borders here in the state of California.
Christina Ochoa says the FDA needs to do more.
We're trusting them, and this is the food that is feeding our future. And I want them to be held to a higher standard.
Now, in response, the FDA tells us their scientists keep up to date on food safety research, but it says it's also the responsibility of the food industry to make sure the substances they use are safe.
It's the responsibility of the food industry to make sure the substances they use are safe? So you want them to self-regulate. Like, make sure that you guys are using safe ingredients, okay? And let's just call it a day. No, you guys are the regulators. That's the whole purpose of this agency. That is the whole purpose. That is the only purpose. So what is going on here? And by the way, I remember covering this story years ago, back in 2014. The Washington Post had a piece that talked about the voluntary regulations that were being doled out by the FDA. Let me give you a few excerpts here. The more widespread concern among food safety advocates and some federal regulators is the quickening trend of companies opting for an expedited certification process to a degree never intended when it was established 17 years ago to, in part, help businesses. A voluntary certification system has nearly replaced one that relied on a more formal, time-consuming review, where the FDA, rather than the companies themselves, made the final determination on what is safe. The result is that consumers have little way of being certain that the food products they buy won't harm them. Finally, the oversight system shifted dramatically in 1997. In response to a shortage of staff members and complaints from industry that the process was too cumbersome, the FDA proposed new rules. The agency told companies that they no longer would have to submit their research and raw data. The companies can share just a summary of their findings with the agency. What? So why, again, are we just, what is the point of the FDA if they're gonna have private industry self-regulate? And clearly, when they have a profit motive and they need to cut costs to maximize profits, they are not gonna spend the necessary funds to make sure they're using quality ingredients. They need to maximize profits. That's how the system works. They know that. So look, the whole system, guys, it doesn't matter which government agency you're talking about at this point. There's so much corruption, so much so that the food we eat is unsafe and nothing is being done about it. At the heart of every political issue that we discuss on this show is corruption, is endless conflicts of interest, endless legalized bribes. The system is set up to fail us over and over and over again. And we're all stuck talking about nonsense all day long. Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest circus, Tucker Carlson's latest ridiculous rant that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I'm just tired of it. Because whether you're a Democrat, Republican, liberal, progressive, conservative, it doesn't matter. We all live under the same system that is screwing us, while those in the media lie to us and distract us with garbage. That is the reality of the situation. Don't forget it. So next time you have an illness related to the food you're eating, understand that it's happening by design. And there's no one in the FDA apparently looking out for you or looking to regulate the food industries or the food industry that's putting these chemicals and these ingredients in the food that we eat. It's insane. This is the stuff that matters. I just wish this is where the focus was instead of whatever circus people are obsessed with today. Anyway, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including a pretty terrifying acquisition by Amazon. We'll tell you more about it.
Ice cream.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm not gonna read this tweet only because it's from someone I don't trust, so I don't know if it's true. But someone is alleging that Trump paid for like food and all these like wonderful things for the people of East Palestine. He might have, I don't know for sure, but we'll try to confirm that and then we'll tell you what's going on. Anyway, for now, let me go to our Twitch subs. I read from Peachy Shari, who's been with us for 22 months. Haiku Dragon says, so the railroad employees can't strike because it would crash the economy overnight. I read this comment already as well, my bad. A Troll Tropy says, sorry, but that's the funniest man alive. Thank you for saying that, because I feel so much guilt when I say it, because I know I'm not supposed to ever say anything positive about him, but like, let's just call a spade a spade. Trump is funny, right?
They changed their tune.
They changed their tune. Come on, come on, come on. Can't let that happen. Anyway, all right, we've got Kyle 8315. The best part is the original song from early in Prince's career. We're going back to James O'Keefe. The people love that story. Career when people were first starting to notice him and were weirded out by his look and his sexuality and his religion and all the things Republicans care about. And the song was saying, why do you care? Why do you care, really? Like, just let people live, man. Let people live, let them be themselves. But let's come together on the issues that actually matter. You get what I'm saying? Like, all this stuff about culture gets people to care so deeply about the lifestyles or the identities of others when that really has no impact on their lives whatsoever. It's insane. And then we don't pay attention to the things that actually do impact us, the things that make us sick, the things that destroy our planet. It's Cody, the epilepsy dragon, says Ivanka and Jared are being subpoenaed by Jack Smith investigation into January 6th. Yeah, I know. We'll see what happens. I'm just not holding my breath with any of that stuff. I'm just keeping it real with you guys. It ain't our first rodeo, let's just put it that way. But we'll see what happens. And if there's substance there that's worth talking about, I promise you we will talk about it, we will cover it. But we've been through so many Trump-related investigations that led to nowhere, and I'm not gonna waste real estate on this show to talk about more failure. So, all right, let's go to our YouTube members. We've got Mr. Anderson, who gifted 5 TYT memberships. Thank you so much for that. Will Sanchez says, thank you, TYT. I have the oligarchy song in my head. I did too last night, I loved it. Dragon Bat says, Alan Shaw donated $27,000 to DeWine's gubernatorial campaigns. I have no doubt whatsoever. We got to get back to the show. Thank you for your comments. Keep them coming. I'll read more of them in our next social break. For now, let's get back to the show. YouTube member Crystal writes in, and by the way, you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join or just click on that join button if you're watching us on YouTube. I've been working in the food industry all my life. Do you know how much people would try to get away with if they didn't get inspected, let alone self-inspect? Exactly. I mean, there's oversight for a reason. There is regulation for a reason. I don't really understand why we are funding the salaries of people who work at the FDA if they're not doing their jobs and ensuring that the food we're eating is safe. By the way, the other thing is, anytime I've been to Europe, the food not only tastes different, but you feel different after you eat it. I don't know if it's a placebo effect. I don't know if it's all in my head, but you just don't feel that like gross bloated feeling after you eat food in Europe. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, let's move on. We've got more news to get to, including a pretty terrible development when it comes to healthcare in America, just when you thought it couldn't get worse. Amazon has closed its deal, its acquisition of primary health provider One Medical, after the Federal Trade Commission indicated that they would not fight them on closing that deal. Now, this acquisition is just one sign of where the health industry is headed. You should be concerned about your personal data. You should be concerned about companies like Amazon monopolizing things. We'll get to that argument in just a second. But first, the details. The landmark $3.9 billion deal will turn the e-commerce giant into a provider of primary medical care with access to more than 200 brick and mortar doctors' offices, along with roughly 815,000 One Medical members, according to the company's latest financial statement. Now, Amazon signaled a greater interest in the healthcare space when it purchased PillPack in 2018 for $750 million, using the acquisition to launch its own online pharmacy years later. The company has also ramped up its telehealth service called Amazon Care, and it has sought to develop at-home medical diagnostics. Now, what exactly does this mean? I should note that in the near future, it doesn't mean much. So One Health, or what's the name of the company again? Yeah, One Medical. One Medical has been around. They already have hundreds of thousands of members who have signed up for their company and the service they provide. What they're saying is, they're going to offer a $55 discount for a 1-year membership. It currently costs about $144 to be a member of One Medical. But there are some real issues at play here. So I direct you to a senior policy analyst at the American Economic Liberties Project who says allowing Amazon to control the healthcare data for another 700,000 plus individuals is terrifying. Why would that be? Well, Krista Brown continues and says acquiring One Medical will entrench Amazon's growing presence in the healthcare industry, undermining competition. It will also pose serious risks to patients whose sensitive data will be captured by a firm whose own chief information security office once described access to consumer or customer data as a free-for-all. And data is very profitable. I mean, think about it. If Amazon has access to your health-related data because of this acquisition, they can certainly market a lot of product to you. And I mean, look, are these concerns unfounded? Are we hyperventilating about this? How should we really feel about it? Well, the current patients enrolled with One Medical are concerned themselves about the potential data sharing here. So why don't we watch this video that kind of delves into it a little bit.
In terms of Amazon's track record, though, there are instances in which the company has given broad swaths of its global workforce latitude to tap into consumer data. I mean, 44% of US residents use Prime. That is a crazy amount, especially considering that the largest healthcare system in America, HCA, only has access to approximately 1% of US residents. Amazon knows what you're buying, what pills you take, and it can guide your decisions to buy and when, and will probably use those in terms of healthcare.
Great, that's great, awesome. Hey, remember when Elizabeth Warren was talking about the need to break up big tech? Like Amazon, is it a grocery service? Is it an online retailer? Is it a healthcare provider? I mean, it is taking over every sector of our economy. And the fact that we already have a broken healthcare model doesn't make me feel good about the fact that Amazon is now getting involved, along with other tech companies, by the way, in acquiring health providers, in this case, One Medical. And of course, you're gonna hear all sorts of happy talk about how, this is gonna be super efficient. This is great. Just like we heard from the tech sector about, yeah, social media, it's gonna democratize. That's what we want to do over here in Silicon Valley. We want to democratize. Do you feel more democracy with the tech sector right now? So with all the happy talk we hear about how this is going to lead to more efficiency in healthcare, possibly lower costs, what's the reality? Let's go back to that Axios reporter who has done some pretty decent digging into this story.
Amazon and One Medical say this deal will make things more convenient for those using healthcare services. Amazon also says this acquisition will help make healthcare more accessible to people who haven't had access to it. So will Amazon's expansion here make healthcare more accessible, more broadly available?
I'd love to say the answer is yes, but unfortunately, I do not have any current evidence to support that theory. And I say that only because Amazon's efforts in healthcare so far have been largely directed at the worried well, and so have One Medical's. They largely serve people who are fairly affluent, fairly wealthy, and want what they call concierge medical care. I will say Amazon had one effort that was targeted at the working class. It had a partnership, still has a partnership with a company called Crossover Healthcare. And so they have clinics set up with them near Amazon warehouses. It remains to be seen how this deal will impact those. I definitely will have my eyes peeled for that. But I don't see this deal as about equity or accessibility, to be honest.
Yeah, she's right about that. Because anyone who would be naive enough to think a private company acquiring another private company is somehow going to solve our healthcare concerns is just incredibly misled and incredibly ignorant about how private industry works in this country. Now, finally, what's up with the FTC? I mean, the FTC, especially under Lina Khan's leadership, has been pretty good in fighting back against monopolies and these types of acquisitions. Now, apparently, they did not fight against this acquisition, but they say that they are still investigating it and can potentially roll back this acquisition. We all know that that's not gonna happen, right? But let me give you the statement. So this is Douglas Farrer, who's a spokesperson for the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC's investigation of Amazon's acquisition of One Medical continues. The commission will continue to look at possible harms to competition created by this merger, as well as possible harms to consumers that may result from Amazon's control and use of sensitive consumer health information held by One Medical. But it's a lot harder to undo an acquisition, especially compared to preventing it from happening in the first place. So don't be misled into thinking they're gonna reverse this. They're not gonna reverse it. It's incredibly hard to do it. What's done is done. Amazon has acquired One Medical, and they've acquired the members that had already signed up for One Medical and all the data that comes along with it. So let's see what they do with it. I don't have high hopes. I don't think that this is gonna lead to any real solution when it comes to our broken healthcare model. We got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we've got some updates on how Biden is responding to the immigration crisis. And we'll also talk a little bit about some fun stories like dunking on Jordan Peterson, because he is very upset at anyone telling him that he doesn't need to use as much paper towel as he uses. Real important issue that he's concerned about. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Here at the Young Turks, we do our best to bring you the most essential news stories of the day, but we can't cover everything in a 2-hour show. And for the rest, I recommend Ground News. Founded by a former NASA scientist, Ground News uses a revolutionary system that analyzes where the news is coming from and gives you complete transparency on the potential biases these sources may have. That way, you can read between the lines of media bias and break free from the corporate media agenda. In arming you with the context and transparency, you'll have everything you need to think critically about the news and build responsible media literacy for yourself and others. With Ground News, you're not just mindlessly consuming the media, you're part of a movement that is working to hold them accountable and get straight to the facts. Break through the filter bubbles, the propaganda, and the bias, and subscribe to Ground News today.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
I got pulled in. They told me, hey, listen, Cenk, we're insiders. We are the establishment.
People in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. We think that there's a better role for you, and it's not in 6 o'clock. The problem with the mainstream media is they're desperate to get access. They don't challenge the government. They don't challenge power. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
Components that corrupt our politicians, I think, also corrupt mainstream media. It's really difficult for cable outlets to talk about things like income inequality, wealth inequality, when the advertisers that are funding their shows are the same corporations that want to ensure that the same system continues. People watch digital media or new media, they get a completely different message. They focus on the issues that matter or resonate more with the constituency. We need to know one thing. Is the corporate media incompetent?
Corporate media, I can't hear you. Establishment press, where are you? I can't hear you. But the media's position I am clear on. Everything is pro-war, so everything is just framed that way. In this case, I mean, war is inevitable, right? I mean, the defense contractors should get a couple more $1 trillion. You ready for the stunning results? Only 6% of people say they have a great deal of confidence in the press. Wakey, wakey, okay? Progressives don't like the media either. You know why? It's the corporate media. Corporate media sounds like a conspiracy. Wait. Who owns you? Multi-billion-dollar corporations, public corporations. You have to do corporate media because corporations own us. Yeah, that's how it works. We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Okay, I'm gonna try to stimulate a feeling in you.
Sexual temptation. Oh.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. How you doing, John?
I'm the best that has ever been.
Best around.
Something like that, yeah. This is America.
It is America. All right. Did you see Trump's press conference in East Palestine?
I read a little bit about it. I saw already his followers were like spreading videos of the stuff that he brought being given out that wasn't from that. It was video of like other stuff. Like
I was wondering
they're
about
just openly lying.
Right, because
they really don't care.
Yeah, so someone sent me there was a tweet from Benny Johnson who
he was one of them.
Yeah, I would not trust his tweet, right? Like he might not be lying, but we have to confirm it obviously. And he's just like, "Oh yeah, Trump paid for all of this stuff." It's like,
maybe.
Did he? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he's so scared of Ron DeSantis he finally listened to someone's good advice. Maybe.
But look.
But the video that Benny Johnson shared apparently was not accurate.
Right. Regardless though, the optics, like Trump knows what he's doing. And that's the point that I made when I talked about it.
Well, he'll know what he's doing if he chucks it, then it shows empathy.
I mean, you do see that difference between how he treated the victims of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico versus, Anyway,
they changed their tune.
They changed their tune.
They did. Yeah.
Anyway, by the way, I think no one hates Trump more than John Idarola. So like, even when Trump is funny, John is like, no.
When was he funny? What did he do?
He's funny all the time. You got to admit it.
They changed their tune.
Who talks like that, John?
I don't know.
Look, he's not
Hitler.
funny.
Mussolini.
They changed their tune.
Their tune. Okay, anyway, we've got serious news to get to, including an update on how the Biden administration is handling migration, which is not good, but I think there's too much emphasis on the executive branch, not enough emphasis on the inaction by Congress on this issue. So keep that in mind as we give you the details. The Biden administration has announced an immigration proposal that's pretty reminiscent of policies that were implemented under Donald Trump. Now, the new restrictions, and restriction really is the key word here, will largely bar migrants who traveled through other countries on their way to the US-Mexico border from applying for asylum in the United States. This is going to impact tens of thousands of migrants and refugees. And the whole idea is, listen, if you had to travel through another country to get to us, why don't you stay at that country? You know, just stay there. That's the policy, which is pretty bad.
That seems exactly like the Trump policy.
100%, right?
I'm sure there's some difference you're getting to,
yes,
but thus far.
Small differences, but I want to be clear, the small differences are mostly because of federal judges, okay? So federal judges have weighed in on this matter and have stated that you can't implement this policy when it comes to unaccompanied minors, for instance, okay? So luckily we have some decent federal judges left, but let me give you the details on what Biden is doing. So the proposed rule would presume asylum ineligibility and encourage migrants to avail themselves of lawful, safe, and orderly pathways to the United States, of which there are few, by the way, or otherwise to seek asylum or other protection in countries through which they travel, thereby reducing reliance on human smuggling networks that exploit migrants for financial gain, according to the text of the regulation. So those who don't meet the strict asylum eligibility requirements under the proposal would be subject to quick deportation, no questions asked. Now there are some exceptions. I mentioned the unaccompanied minors. Other individuals who would be exempt from this policy include those with acute medical emergencies, imminent and extreme threat of violent crimes, if they're worried about being victims of that, being a victim of human trafficking, or other extremely compelling circumstances. So those are the exemptions that the Biden administration has laid out. Now, how are they defending this policy, especially after we heard from campaign Biden saying that he's going to be far more humane when it comes to asylum seekers compared to Donald Trump? Well, a Biden administration official told CNN this: to be clear, this was not our first preference or even our second. These temporary measures are being taken out of necessity. The Homeland Security and Justice Departments argued that surging numbers of migrants left them little choice. They anticipate illegal crossings to climb to between 11,000 and 13,000 a day if no action is taken after Title 42 ends. And Title 42 is going to end because it should end, guys. I mean, Title 42 was implemented during COVID to stop the spread of COVID by people traveling to the United States. And then the COVID emergency ended, but Title 42 remained in place. You know what I'm saying? So like the idea for the Biden administration is, well, once it's officially lifted, then we're gonna have this surge of migrants coming to the border, and we need to find a way to prevent them from coming to the border. So John, thoughts on this?
I get why they might think that that's a good explanation for changing from their rhetoric on the campaign to what they have right now. But it kind of seems like if what you said is, we're not gonna be barbaric to people, okay, we're gonna be different. Oh wait, there's a lot of people? Okay, we're gonna be barbaric to a lot of people. How is that the explanation? That it was wrong when Trump did it, but if there's more people to do it to, it becomes fine. There's no alternative, there's nothing else that you can do. I mean, you can just say, hey, what are you gonna do? We have to look at it after ourselves, but don't try to pretend that there's some sort of moral underpinning to this.
I love that you mentioned that, because that is exactly what we're seeing right now, the moral underpinning, just using their alleged morality to justify this policy. So the administration portrayed these efforts as a way to protect migrants from the dangerous journeys as they travel north to the United States and allow the US border entry points to manage the migrant flows in a safe and efficient manner. But critics have said that they want to use an app, by the way, to have them basically register and schedule an appointment to,
without having to come in person.
Right, yeah, they're like, listen, we have a solution. Just download the app, okay? Because I'm sure that the migrants coming to the border like have the resources, the technology, like just the ability to do that, to rely on an app in order to schedule an appointment to appear at a border entry point.
Exactly, and then super easy to just get there at that particular time. Yeah, and if you try to get one of these things from like 2 countries away, your chances are probably really high. I mean, so you have an app, good. Well, I was worried that this was barbaric.
So,
and also, by the way, we want to have this policy so they don't even bother coming is just a slightly more complex version of Trump giving a speech saying don't come. That's what they would say. Stephen Miller would write the speeches for him. Don't come. This is just a tech bro adjacent version of the argument that was being made by the Trump administration.
That's what this appears to be, but at the same time, like this issue is far more complicated and nuanced than anyone will admit to, right? So listen, everyone wants to be mad at Biden, but understand that to solve the immigration policy, to solve our immigration issues, we need legislation by Congress, right? So let's talk about the reaction from Democrats to what Biden is doing, okay? Because the reaction from Democrats is a strongly worded letter. Pramila Jayapal and Jerry Nadler wrote a strongly worded letter to Joe Biden. I don't care about your strongly worded letter, and neither does Joe Biden, quite frankly, okay? If you're not going to actually do your jobs and legislate, pass immigration reform, which we obviously desperately need, then that's it. Like we're gonna keep kicking the can down the road. We're gonna keep implementing inhumane policies. And look, guys, let's also keep it real, right? I feel like the left, oftentimes when it comes to this issue, has a just let everyone in idea, except we don't have like endless resources for that. There needs to be some policy to restrict, the flow of people coming into the country. It's just the fact of the matter. We don't have enough housing, we don't have enough resources. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you like, no, we should totally have an open border policy, it'll be totally fine. That's not the reality of the situation. At the same time though, we do have people in the country who are of undocumented status. We need to have a discussion about, first of all, how they get abused by companies, they get underpaid, sometimes, oftentimes less than minimum wage, and they don't have the ability to report them to the authorities because they're worried about being deported. We need to do something about that. Like the entire system is broken, and there hasn't even really been a debate in Congress about immigration reform since 2013.
Yeah, I might amend what you had said to, rather than they need to do something now, which seems inconceivable.
It is inconceivable.
And even if it was conceivable, what I might concede is that any bill that would come out of this Republican House would be far worse than a barbaric status quo. Maybe I might be wrong, I doubt it. I also think, look, if you're talking about solving the migration problem or whatever, I don't think, and I know that you don't, they probably want that conversation to be bound to how thick is the wall gonna be. I think that we obviously need to go way broader than that, including potentially like housing can be built. We have hundreds and hundreds of additional $1 billion to spend on our defense budget over and above any reasonable need to secure America. So in theory, if money were to be allocated to a holistic view of dealing with migration and integrating people into communities throughout America, I mean, there's a lot of resources that could be there in theory.
But they don't go. But those resources don't go toward those.
Yeah, in the same way that an immigration bill doesn't get talked about or voted on.
Exactly.
Both of these things are purely speculative.
My point is, this issue is not going to be solved unilaterally by the executive branch because the executive branch doesn't have the ability to solve it unilaterally. You need congressional action.
Yeah.
Congress is useless. Congress is useless. They love to bitch and moan about this issue, but they do nothing about it, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans. Okay, so that's the problem here, and it's an incredibly frustrating situation to talk about because all the focus is also on the southern border, which I get. Some people, they're visual, like they want to visualize the problem, right? Oh, we just need a wall. The wall will solve everything, except it won't. It won't, guys. It won't solve everything. Okay, I need people to understand that the vast majority of undocumented immigrants in the country right now didn't cross the southern border. They flew in and they stayed here. So
the wall's gonna have to be really tall then.
I mean, I don't know. Do we do an iron dome to prevent people from coming in?
Don't put it out there.
Okay.
Marjorie Greene has already taken out her crayons and she's sketching out what it's gonna look like.
God, she's so dumb. Okay, so let me give you the numbers. Let's go to graphic 7 here. Data from the Center for Migration Studies shows that 2/3 of the nation's 10.2 million unauthorized immigrants entered legally, either with a visa or a permit, but they overstayed.
Yeah, but caravan.
It's just this issue has been boiled down to culture war theater, when in reality we're talking about human lives.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about actual comprehensive legislation to deal with it effectively.
No, and nor will we soon. Can I ask you a super quick question?
Absolutely.
Do you think that Biden is, do you think it's one or the other of this thing, or a mix? And if so, what mix? He's doing this because it's in a vain quest to get the approval of Republicans who will never give it to him no matter what he does. If he were to stand on the border wall with a massive flamethrower burning up migrants, they would still boo him. Or does he he thinks this is necessary? I need to do this, I'm gonna do this. Is it honest or not?
I think Biden,
could be wrong either way.
In my opinion, I think it's pretty obvious that Biden has tried to run away from the immigration issue, and he's getting hounded by it. And so he has to address it. And I don't know, I think he's at this point smart enough to understand that he's never gonna get the approval from his Republican, colleagues or whatever. But I think he just wants them to ease off a bit and at least provide the appearance that he's doing something about migration.
Yeah.
But make no mistake about this. This is just almost a photocopy version of what Trump did, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly sad because, again, we're not talking about inanimate objects. We're talking about human lives, and we're talking about people fleeing oftentimes incredibly dangerous, violent situations in their country. So.
Yep.
All right, we got to take a break. I'm looking for a little bit of relief, okay? Maybe I'll find it with some lighter stories when we come back. But you have to come back to find out, okay? So don't miss the next segment. It'll be good no matter what, I promise. Come right back.
There's a human in there. A human.
Ice cream.
A human.
Ice cream.
A human.
Ice cream.
There's a human in there. A human.
Just want to say thank you to Verbose Dragon for making me this.
Ooh, you got a super colorful one
I know,
with little
it's
wings.
super girly too.
It's super girly, yeah.
Thank you for this. This is super sweet. I love it. And I really, really appreciate your letter as well.
Yeah, she gave one to Bart too, and I think he lost 8% of his cynicism when he saw that thing.
Thank you, Verbose. You made me have hope for humanity.
I have another dragon that was made by a viewer of ours, and it's in my room. Charlie tries to get to it because he thinks it's a chew toy for him.
Oh God.
Yeah, but don't worry, I put the dragon in a high place that he can't get to. Anyway, all right, let's read some comments. You know what? I haven't read any super chats, so I'm gonna go ahead and read some right now. Starting with Moondragon, who says, Norfolk Southern, which by the way, Norfolk Southern, you guys gotta rebrand. Like that name is awful.
It's confusing. Which way do I go to get to you? It's
Wait till you hear the way Amy Goodman pronounces it, because it sounds like she's saying the F word every time. I'm like,
that's kind of how I say it.
Yeah, how do you say it?
Norfolk Southern.
Yeah, that's how she says it. I'm just like, be careful.
I think that's how it's named, I think. Maybe it's an East Coast thing.
Yeah,
but
maybe, yeah.
Like
anyway.
Suffolk.
Yeah.
Suffolk.
Anyway, so the comment from Moondragon is that the rail company believes in the science of economics and fiduciary responsibility. I see you trying to get me to say fiduciary. Don't worry, I love saying it.
They also like feckless brakes.
True. Nishi Hoo says, you're a powerful woman.
Ooh.
I like that. Oligarchy. Okay, Otto writes it.
Is that Beyonce? Seems like Beyonce.
No. James O'Keefe like misspent money from Project Veritas on his like musical theater ambitions, and he put together like you missed this? Oh my God.
Musical theater
Oh my God.
ambitions?
Kate, please get the James O'Keefe music video clip that we used earlier this week for the bonus episode, because I want to be here when John sees it for the first time. Oh my God, I can't wait.
Oh, I'm waiting for John's reaction. I'm still there.
Okay, you can become a member, by the way, by going to tyt.com/join. All right, let's go to Otto, who says this is the derail industry. Absolutely, there's more than like 1,000 train derailments in the country. Pete Buttigieg literally, Pete Buttigieg said that in a Yahoo interview as if like somehow that's a good way to defend himself. Like this is just one of like 1,000 train derailments a year.
You know, I always thought that trains were like attached to the track. I didn't realize they were just balanced on it. And they had to really like keep it together.
All right, we got to get back to the show. I'll see you there.
A human.
Ice cream.
A human.
Ice cream.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Lots to get to, including this insane story about what Democrats want to accomplish in Massachusetts when it comes to incarcerated people and organ donation. There's an insane bill in Massachusetts. It's been proposed in the House of Representatives in the state, and they're calling for potentially shorter prison sentences for inmates who are willing to donate body parts, particularly their organs. 4 Democrats like sponsored this bill.
Do they like need organs desperately?
Well, okay, so let's address that real quick. Yes, there are many people in this country. Maybe I don't know about them specifically, but yes, there are many people in the country who are in need of organ donors. But you shouldn't have people in a state of duress essentially make decisions about whether or not they donate an organ. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a power imbalance here that the Democrats who decided that they want to sign on to this should have thought about. But let me give you the details on what the bill would do. So the bill is called HD 3822, and it would establish a bone marrow and organ donation program. Through the program, prisoners would be eligible to have their sentence reduced anywhere from 60 to 365 days if they donate organs or bone marrow. So you can donate, you could be a living donor if you're looking to donate a kidney. You can live with 1 kidney. You could also be an organ donor if you want to donate, part of your liver. Apparently the liver regenerates, which is freaking incredible.
I think you can do a lobe.
I don't know what that is.
It's part of it.
Oh, it's called a lobe?
I think so.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so
I'm not a doctor, to be clear, but I have watched a lot of House.
Okay, so there are ways to be a living donor, but that is a serious decision that you should make in a context where you're not in a cage, okay? And where you're being offered a shorter time in the cage should you decide to be a living donor. Let me give you more. So the bill is sponsored by 4 Democrats. The sponsors of HD 3822, all legislators of color who have supported health equity and prison reform, told CBS Boston that they were concerned with the shortage of donors of color compared with the preponderance of people of color waiting for organs. Matching racial or ethnic backgrounds can improve the success of an organ or bone marrow transplant. Anyway, I don't know how true that is, but nonetheless, they
I
also
believe it. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. I wouldn't be surprised.
Really,
if
like
that was
what?
True. Familial connection, lots of stuff. There's a lot of genetic markers that like get you up or down that scale, and that could have a really big effect on.
I'm not an expert at it. I think it's
I am. Like I said, I've
interesting.
watched House.
Okay. Anyway, this is incredibly cruel, and I don't think this is the right way to go about this, right?
Yeah.
Because again, you're enticing people in a terrible position to give up part of their body in order to get out of that terrible position a little quicker.
A little quicker, yeah. Can we put up that last graphic for a second?
Sure.
Because I found the last sentence to be like, I maybe would have worded it differently. They said the program, quote, would restore bodily autonomy I don't think that means exactly what you think it means. Like taking a part of your body out and giving it to someone else is like technically autonomy for the body part, but I don't think that's what people were looking for. Yeah, look, this is the sort of idea that maybe freshman in college gets high and is like, I can solve this problem or something. Until you think about it like for like a single second, they'll make the sentences longer going forward.
Yeah, exactly,
Like,
exactly.
Why would you assume that all else would be equal? Like they'll make the conditions worse or they'll make the sentences longer or God knows what. I think the last message that we need to send to incarcerated people, just in case they haven't gotten it, is that we see them as meat. And that's it. They're not real people. They don't deserve consideration or empathy. They certainly shouldn't vote. All you are is a kidney, some lungs, and a liver walking around, and maybe the heart or the brain. We'll see. Maybe like a payment to the family if you donate one of those. I get that you want to solve this problem, and I get that it's complex. Technically easy to solve. If everyone just routinely donated things like bone marrow, it would be solved, but that's shockingly difficult to get people to do. I understand that.
By the way, donating, I know this, I've experienced it. Donating bone marrow is not a small thing. It's not the same.
No, it's not, yeah.
It's actually, I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it. You should do it if you want to. I wanted to do it because there are a lot of people who are in dire need of bone marrow. Anyway, it's not easy and it's pretty painful. And some people it takes a while to recover, as long as a month in some cases. They'll feel fatigued and all of that. Again, I'm not saying all of this to discourage you. I think it's wonderful when people do this.
It also could save a life.
It could save a life, exactly, which is why I felt, 2 people very, very close to me were diagnosed with blood cancer last year. And I was like, I want to do something.
Well, and as bad as that is, taking one of your kidneys or part of your liver, it's not like they just pluck it off your body like it's a ripe plum.
So I wanted
like that's surgery. People get sick, they can die.
So I wanted to address that because I think that's the other part of this that is just, I think, potentially devastating. Think about the recovery that your body needs to go through after donating an organ. You want to be comfortable and you want to be in a safe place where you get the medical care that you need. Now think about what the conditions are in prisons. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I am not comfortable with someone recovering from donating an organ in a prison. Like that's nuts.
Well, I mean, look how people were treated, with COVID during the pandemic and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, just all of this reeks of like, what can we mine from like 2000s era sci-fi movies? This is like The Island, basically. There are other solutions to the problem. There's got to be. We can incentivize people, with something other than cutting their sentence.
And look, this is an issue, the lack of organ donors, that is an issue. There are 22 Americans who die every single day in America as they wait for an organ that they need. So this is definitely a problem. But further exploiting people in our carceral state to solve the problem ain't the solution that these Democrats think it is.
We should have one of them on because I would just be fascinated to hear their responses to some of these points. Because
I'm open to it.
I mean, this story, I think has struck a lot of people as just on its face so horrifying.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe they know something we don't, or not.
All right, I want to move on. We've got a lot more to get to, including a story involving Malcolm X.
Out of New York City now, attorney Ben Crump is suing the city's police department and other government agencies. He claims they covered up evidence connected to the assassination of civil rights leader Malcolm X.
Malcolm X's family is now suing for $100 million. Here's more of what one of Malcolm X's daughters had to say in Manhattan today.
For years, our family has fought for the truth to come to light concerning his murder, and we'd like our father to receive the justice that he deserves.
Malcolm X's family, his daughters in particular, have announced that they will be filing a wrongful death lawsuit against the NYPD, the FBI, and CIA for $100 million. They're alleging that those government agencies were involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. The announcement also came on the 58th anniversary of his assassination. Now, the suit hinges on one big question. Was the government involved? There's a lot of speculation about that. I think for good reason. And it depends on who you ask. So if you're relying on a Washington Post reporter, maybe don't. The circumstances surrounding Malcolm X's death have long been shrouded in mystery. Now, scholar and activist Angela Davis puts it a little differently. She says, well, of course, we all assume that the government had something to do with the assassination of Malcolm. And it's actually quite remarkable that 58 years later, we are still addressing the question of who was responsible for his death. Ben Crump also has a strong statement about this, saying that the governmental agencies had factual and exculpatory evidence that they fraudulently concealed from the family of Malcolm X and the men wrongfully convicted of crimes surrounding the assassination of Malcolm X. And to be sure, there were certainly individuals who were wrongfully convicted of killing Malcolm X. The two individuals were Mohammed Aziz and Kahil Islam. They were wrongfully arrested and later exonerated in 2021. But I should note that one of them, Islam, had died in 2009 prior to being exonerated. There was a third man who was arrested for the assassination, Mujahid Abdul Halim. He confessed to the murder and was released on parole in 2010. But I'm fascinated by this suit because if it goes forward, if Ben Crump or the lawyers representing Malcolm X's daughters have evidence that can show that the feds were involved in the assassination, and I certainly lean in their direction in thinking that, it should be presented.
Yeah, obviously probably goes without saying I have no idea exactly what happened, although if there were two buttons in front of me and one said the government was involved and the other said that it wasn't, I would mash that one if I was forced to. Yeah. I suspect probably. I find it, I would presume the idea that they have direct evidence of that seems hard to imagine after all this time. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that evidence of it doesn't exist. And in theory, Joe Biden is the president. If he wanted to have a team look into this, I don't know that I necessarily see Joe Biden as the sort of president that would be willing to unveil something like this that would reflect so poorly on the government. He seems pretty defensive of its reputation, but we know what the government was getting up to in those years and in all other years. So yes, I buy that there's the chance.
Yeah, I definitely lean in that direction as well, especially considering that in 2011, there was a former police officer who confessed that he helped the FBI get 2 members of Malcolm X's crowd security detail arrested just days before he was assassinated. Interesting. He was also present when Malcolm X was assassinated, though he claims that he was unaware that Malcolm X was going to be killed. So he says, I had nothing to do with the actual assassination, but I will admit that a few days prior to the assassination, I helped to get members of his security detail arrested.
That was just for fun, though.
Yeah, and then
for any reason.
And look, guys, we're not just speculating based on nothing, right? I mean, when you look at Martin Luther King Jr., when you look at what happened with Fred Hampton, there's reason why the speculation exists, and there's reason why people aren't buying whatever narrative comes from the federal government in regard to Malcolm X's death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't begrudge his family for wanting justice. And so I'm happy that they're doing this suit, and I'm fascinated to see how it all plays out. So we'll keep an eye on it and let you guys know as we learn more. For now though, why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from, and this is a tough competition, but possibly the most unhinged Republican lawmaker that we've heard from all week. That and more coming right up.
Hello, can we have your liver?
Ice cream.
Live organ transplants.
to do a rapid fire round of comments. I'm gonna do it right now. Jason Ray says, sorry, Anna, I thought you were talking about the backstory from The Last of Us. No, it's our real life. We're so screwed. I don't know what you're referring to, but I agree with you. I just do, because I mean, look at the news cycle.
Organs? I don't know.
No, he wrote that comment earlier. So Jason Ray also says, so selling a body part while in prison to get out of prison is legal, but selling your body in sex work when not in prison can land you in prison.
Where you can then sell your body parts away.
Yeah. In Massachusetts.
It's a self-sustaining economy.
God, this country is a joke. French Fry writes in and says, Anna, it's taxation without representation. No one is representing us now, but they are taxing the heck out of us. Absolutely. That's why when they talk about, like Margaret Brennan, when she was interviewing Bernie Sanders over the weekend, and they were talking about the healthcare system in like Finland. She's like, oh, but the taxes, am I right? Okay, you wanna talk about taxes? Yeah, taxes here. What about the taxes the middle class pays here? Okay, like it's comparable to a lot of these Nordic countries, and we get nowhere near the social spending programs that they do.
Yeah, but we can F a balloon up way worse than they can.
Dude, I can't believe we used a $400,000 missile to shoot down a $12 balloon.
I would have gone way harder. I would have nuked that balloon.
How Blair You says, over the weekend, my friend and yours, Zeke Gonzalez, posted an acoustic version of the TYT theme song. I loved that tune. I did too. It was really, really good.
I haven't seen this.
He's so talented.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, his editing skills are on point.
Well, I always love the editing skills. I just haven't seen the.
But he's really great at playing the guitar. You guys should check it out. History Speaks says both sides are unserious on immigration. Right claims illegal immigrants who in overwhelming percentage are just here to work / support their families are dangerous. Left in denial about impracticality, I should say, / unfairness of open borders. History Speaks, you are absolutely right about that. And it's like, anyway, I just think that there's really no realistic solution being proposed by either side. And we just have to be a little more realistic about it. But if you think any policy is gonna happen from Congress, you'd be mistaken. All right, Lewis Belmont Show walkthrough says, hi John, are you going to WrestleMania this year in Inglewood?
Woo! Wow, he was ready to go. Yes, right now I am going to day one. I'm considering possibly going to day two as well. I'm not sure. That might be too much, but I'm going to day one.
Sounds like a good time.
Very excited.
Mark Keister writes in. I am lying, yeah. Mark Keister says, glad you enjoyed the recipe, Anna. You can let Cenk know that Keister does ring out in this college town. The last name landed me in the hospital. That's not good.
Live organ transplants.
Ice cream.
Hello, can we have your liver?
Live organ transplants.
No, John's trying to convince me that wrestling is anything but nonsense. Like,
no, I'm not trying to convince you that it's not nonsense. Much of the entertainment that I enjoy is nonsense. It's also fun. I need fun. Do you realize
you're gonna get fun in the bonus
environment we dwell in?
Bonus episode when John sees the James O'Keefe music video for the first time. That's gonna be fun.
That's gonna be nonsense.
It's gonna be amazing. tyt.com/join
Okay.
to become a member to watch it if you're not a member already. All right, this next story, I'm not exaggerating, left me speechless. I'm gonna try to muster the energy to respond to it, but without further ado.
This is a talk show.
It is a talk show, but Jesus, let's do it.
You know, in the case where child abuse is fatal, obviously it's not good for the child, but it's actually a benefit to society because there aren't needed for government services and whatnot over the whole course of that child's life.
That was an Alaska state representative named David Eastman. A Republican literally claiming that child abuse fatalities could actually have a silver lining, less of a cost on society.
I don't hear you rebutting his argument, Anna. Dude made a point. What's your counter? Does he think that devil's advocate is like an actual job that you can get and he's trying out? That was insane. Also, it's even if like he doesn't even understand what he's saying, he's wrong as well, but also morally abhorrent.
I think he understands what he's saying. He was asked by other lawmakers, because the first time he said it, they're like, oh, I must have misheard.
But I would argue that he has this stat, which I think you're gonna get to, about the additional cost that child abuse that doesn't result in death can additionally cost to the family and to society, in that the child, needs treatment or whatever. Yeah, but it's also like, in theory, let's say you're gonna be horrific and say it's better if they die. No, there's still tons of costs on the family and on people who know them, and the lost productivity of the person's life. So even inside of the demonic logic he's trying to use, he doesn't even understand what he's saying.
So we did a little digging to learn more about this state lawmaker in Alaska. Stay tuned for that. But first, we got to give you more context about the video. So Eastman was asking a series of questions during this hearing on adverse childhood experiences, such as physical and sexual abuse on children or growing up in a household with domestic violence, okay? Now, he wanted to, and the whole point was to see how it could negatively affect a person throughout their lives. As part of the presentation, documents given to legislators estimated that when child abuse is fatal, it could cost the family and broader society $1.5 million in terms of trauma and what the child could potentially have earned over their lifetime. What, like,
That's
okay,
what I was referring to.
Can we just let's pause
That's
for a
if they
second.
die.
Why? Okay. Why are we doing a freaking cost benefit analysis on this? Like what?
Well, no, I don't think that what they were doing was a cost benefit analysis. I think they were referencing research which tries to give a holistic idea of how devastating this sorts of abuse is.
Got it.
It's not to make decisions about which would be better. He's adding that fun layer on top.
I get it, but it's just really interesting how they got to talk about the financial cost rather than really just being concerned about the human cost. You get what I'm saying? It's like,
it's not enough.
All right, kids be getting beaten up by their family, sometimes their parents, sometimes they die. Now we could maybe like talk about the morality of that and the importance of government actually protecting human lives, or we could run some numbers. Why don't we run some numbers? Like, F your numbers. What are we doing right now?
Yeah. Again, I don't think the original researchers are doing that.
I get it. I hate the framing of this entire discussion. That's my point.
I mean, we've heard a lot of really crazy things come out of the mouths of especially state legislators, like mounting cameras in these state legislatures was an interesting idea. It's exposed us to a lot of, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've just heard such horrific stuff, and it makes me wonder, like, so anybody can become a state legislator?
John,
there's literally no bar whatsoever. The dumbest, craziest people in the country.
Anyone can be president.
That's true.
Okay, like let's just.
Yeah, but he was a billionaire at least. That chucklehead, I'm assuming, does not have billions of dollars and a decade of an NBC reality show.
So with the context that I just gave you, why don't we go to his exchange with Trevor Storrs. He's the president and CEO of the Alaska Children's Trust.
Through the chair, can you say that again? Did you say a benefit for society?
Talking dollars. Now you've got a $1.5 million price tag here for victims of fatal child abuse. It gets argued periodically that it's actually a cost savings because that child is not going to need any of those government services that they might otherwise be entitled to receive and need based on growing up in this type of environment.
Through the chair, Representative, I guess that would be the idea, if I can use a really bad analogy, when you hit somebody, you always back up because it's cheaper to insurance. I don't pertain to that, and I'm really I'm not even sure how to answer that. That there's a cost saving to the death of a child. The impact that has on a family and us as a society when a child is lost, especially to child abuse and neglect, is unmeasurable, and it's hugely tragic.
Listen, I get that, we're trying to have a civil conversation here, but how do you maintain your
decorum?
your decorum, your calm demeanor when this guy is like, actually, turns out that it could be a huge cost savings if the abused child dies. What about that? And by the way, that was bad enough. It's about to get worse, believe it or not. Let's watch.
And the way that you're calculating this 1.5 million, and when I say you, I mean the people who did calculate it, does that 1.5 million get higher or lower depending upon the age at which the child is killed?
So again, there's multiple factors, and a number can definitely increase, but again, I don't believe it's going to matter if they're older or younger. Again, a loss of a child is really unmeasurable.
What the hell?
We live in hell, guys. Like all your religious folks out there who are like restricting yourself from pleasure and whatever because you think you want to go to heaven. No, it's over. You're already in hell. You're here. You're here. I can't believe that exchange happened.
You could have let me guess 1,000 things he would ask, and I would not have guessed that. We constantly beg of people on this little screen right here to ask follow-up questions. I don't want them anymore. No more follow-up questions, they're too crazy. That guy is basically Cards Against Humanity as a human. Like he's just trying to freak out everyone in the room with him. Why? What does it matter? What does he think the end goal of this? Them deciding which year to finish the kid off?
Oh my God.
What do you work? What's your project, man? Why are you asking about this?
By the way, you want to take a stab at?
The kid's 7. It's not even worth it to use a bullet at this point.
No pun intended. I apologize for that. But like, you want to take a guess at where Representative David Eastman falls in the reproductive rights argument?
I'm gonna guess mandated execution of abortioners. I don't know what.
Well, in June.
Well, wait. How old is the abortioner? Where do we stand on teen doctors?
Would society save more money if we call for the murder of the doctor when they're older or when they're younger?
What is his position?
Let's go to this Facebook post from June 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Babies' lives matter, but do they, Representative Eastman? Do they? Because it seems like when money's involved, they don't matter at all.
No, babies' lives matter. Toddlers.
No. Fetus, zygote, embryo, anything prior to exiting the womb. Okay.
Really fast though, because I want to help him because he's provided entertainment for us.
No, I don't want to help him.
So he had good material, I think, for that. But now that we're watching, he's not going to use the same material. So I want to get him started. I want to set his mind ablaze. If you can take one child and think about the cost savings if they weren't alive rather than if they were alive, imagine how much money could be saved if no humans were ever born again. I mean, we're gonna be flush with cash.
Flush with cash. If you watch Parks and Rec, you know what that is. No, it's such a great point. That's such a great point.
It's just so stupid. It's not even how it works, man.
Listen,
can I move and run against him now?
Yes.
Because I feel like I need to.
Do you want to live in Alaska? Not that there's anything against Alaska, it's just
I'm a
very
fan
cold.
of puffins.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of puffins
They
and
are
not
cute.
killing abused kids. So I think I'm gonna do well there.
Now, you should find some solace in the fact that it seems as though even his Republican colleagues in the state house don't like him. Eastman was not invited to join the House majority, and his requests to join the caucus were rebuffed. Veteran lawmakers said he has alienated every caucus he has joined with his no compromise approach to legislating and his tendency to use his newsletters to harangue his GOP colleagues.
Oh, we got to get those newsletters.
I would, yes. How do we get those newsletters? That's such a great point. Also, he is a lifetime member of the Oath Keepers. So, and he attended the January 6th riots. Yeah,
It was a long trip, but worth it.
Asked about his involvement with the Oath Keepers, he says this: I joined the Oath Keepers when it first started and will always consider it a privilege to stand with those in the military and first responders who strive to keep their oaths to the Constitution. Except he also faced trial last year for betraying his oath to office for his role in the Capitol riot. So there's that. Seems like you're a bit of a traitor. And he has shown zero remorse for his actions. The trial, he said in an interview, amounted to, you went to a political event that was a no-no, and now we're going to punish you. And that's fundamentally not American. Apparently what is American is attempting to undo the results of our democratic process because you didn't like the results.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what a clown.
Yeah, it is, once again, his logic was faulty. It might have made sense financially to end America as an experiment like 100 years in, but it's too old now. The cost savings just aren't there.
And unfortunately, by the way,
this guy's wild.
I just don't want to hear from any Republican or any conservative media judging women who practice their reproductive rights, because you guys don't give a damn about human lives at all. Here he is openly and very honestly talking about the cost savings associated with abused children dying from their abuse.
Hashtag save the children, or not.
Hashtag keep your kids away from Republican lawmakers.
Yeah.
How about that? Jeez, all right.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. You know, John, there's a story that I saved specifically for you.
Ooh.
It's about the 4-day work week.
Oh yes.
One of your favorite topics.
It is.
So we unfortunately don't have enough time to cover it in the main show, but we're gonna talk about it in the bonus episode today. So definitely check that out if you are a member, tyt.com/join. We're also gonna show John the James O'Keefe music video. He has not seen it. It'll be a first time for him, which I'm excited about. The other thing we're gonna do is talk about the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I forgot about that story.
Yeah.
That is a fun one.
And why it is that people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk are obsessed with the Lord of the Rings.
I hate it.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about that. I know.
And maybe WrestleMania, we'll see.
Maybe, but we gotta also talk about Jordan Peterson.
It's too much.
There's too much, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it all. Now, since we have a few more minutes left, I'm gonna read some comments from our viewers. Let's go to Stinky Feet, who says, when a corporation spends as much or more on lobbying as they do on actual safety or prevention measures, that tells you where their actual priorities are. No, but Stinky Feet, let's just, anytime there is a profit motive and anytime a company is publicly traded, meaning they have to worry about their investors, we know what their priority is. We don't even need to like dig deep to find out like, oh, well, let's look at your financials. They're going to want to cut costs everywhere, anywhere possible in order to maximize their profits, because they got those calls with the investors every quarter, and if they're not providing a return on investment, they're in trouble. So that's what really goes on. Again, this is how the system is supposed to work. And we should change that, especially when it comes to things that we need to, live, survive, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, Wedgie Dragon says, thanks for covering this, Anna. I still live close to the disaster in East Palestine and grew up less than 100 feet from the railroad tracks run by Norfolk Southern. Makes me nervous when I hear the train whistle. Make CEOs live in East Palestine. Yeah, that would be nice, right? How about you guys live in the areas that you destroy with your business practices? All right, let's also move up to, someone wanted to thank me for covering the FDA story. I lost your comment, but thank you for saying that. I know it's not like a big news story, but I'm glad we did cover it.
Which story was that?
So the FDA has all sorts of issues. They mostly rely on food companies to self-regulate.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result, we have all sorts of potentially harmful chemicals in our food that have been banned in Europe, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So we talked about that a little bit. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that there is enough news coverage on it. I was actually surprised to see that CBS recently covered that story. But please read the Politico investigation that I referenced in the context of that story, because while it's very lengthy, I think it's pretty thorough. There wasn't enough concentration on the corruption angle, but I went into that a little bit in the story. Anyway, but it kind of gives you a sense of how the agency is basically set up to fail. And it's been a disaster ever since. So, and honestly, no one should be able to lobby the FDA. The fact that they have lobbyists, they're taking meetings with lobbyists is insane to me.
Yeah.
All right, we got a minute left. I'm gonna read a few more comments. Let's go to our Twitch viewers. Overseer Dixon says, yeah, Massachusetts Dems can't get their healthy baby brain juice dose now that the lives of babies have been saved by the Supreme Court. So they have to turn elsewhere for internal organs to feed on.
Yeah, so that is either a satirical QAnon thing or an honest QAnon thing.
I think it's satirical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd have to pass a law if this was going on. I think they just take the organs.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, and then one more comment. I'm gonna go to our member section. Next TYT reporter says, Bart was born ready, John? I don't know what that's a reference to. Oh, the sounds in
I'm a professional, look it up in the book.
And with that, we end the main show, move over to our bonus episode. Don't miss it, tyt.com/join to become a member. We'll see you there.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are